On this episode of Purposely Curious, we talk about the alleged crimes of actor Armie Hammer, but most importantly, I touch on the impacts of social media and how the public has come up with a possible conspiracy regarding the actor. I myself find this to be plausible, as social media has been an integral part in the last few years in solving some cold cases that detectives had not solved themselves. So get nice and cozy as this episode starts now. Hello, Leonie.
Greetings, Mary. How are you?
I'm good. How are you as far as anything exciting to report to the Purposely Curious podcast?
There's always something exciting. It's frosty. It's like, what happened? It wasn't supposed to be warm by now? Like summertime, sort of, something, right?
You know, it's so weird that you say that, because I talked to my aunt after work. I was running late. The point is that she was like, it's cold, and she lives, I want to say, near Fontana, and I was like, I don't think it's cold. So you're the second person to tell me that it's cold, and I'm not feeling it. But maybe because I was stressed out, like running around doing things after work.
Right. You're also like privileged. You get that little privilege going on from the beach weather over there.
Oh yeah, well, that's the thing. Wouldn't it be cooler here?
It's interesting. I think it's more stable because of the, what do you call that? The marine flow, the ocean, water temperature and the clouds and all that. Like, it may feel cooler, but it's not going to be cold,
Yeah.
So that's why you, like, your summers, like extreme heats are like maybe 85, 88,
Well, it can get hotter, but I've noticed since you and I started recording, because we record, if you guys are listening, like have listened to other episodes, Leonie and I record remotely.
Yes.
So when we have talked about weather, sometimes it has been hotter here than where you are, which is odd. But usually, yes, we're cooler for sure.
Right.
Because of the marine layer. Yeah.
Yeah, it's been, I don't know. It's just weird. It's like you had 80, 90s the other day, and then like now it's like 60 for a high, and I'm like, it's a little frosty. Because that means tonight's going to be like in the 40s, overnight. So I'm like, ooh.
Yeah.
But all is going well over here. Just, enjoying life, staying busy. How about yourself? What's new with you?
Well, I got a tattoo, like about, I want to say almost 2 weeks ago. So the biggest thing with me is that, how I had been working out with the bike and everything. And I had like this super rigid, like routine. But due to the placement of the tattoo and the like healing process, I'm really unable to work out for at least 14 days. So I've been feeling terrible, where I've been feeling like I don't have to, like, I'm doing my things for, like my little projects I'm doing. But then I feel like then I have nothing to do, which is weird because I just started this a few months ago, right? So I didn't realize how much of my life and kind of like daily routine this became so important, like addicting.
Right.
So I've been feeling out of whack after work. So like today, I was running around, I was making a big purchase for, like my little shop or whatever. Mm-hmm. And, then I came home, I ate, and obviously I have the podcast right today, but then tomorrow it might be a different story. You know what I mean? So I'm feeling like I can't wait till next week.
Right.
To where, I can go back to my rigid routine
right.
of working out. So I was really excited because I went to Death Valley this weekend.
Oh, nice.
And so Death Valley is a national park here in the United States. It's called Death Valley because it's one of the hottest places in the world in the summer. And so they called it Death Valley. So we had planned to go to Death Valley in January, and then we kept pushing it back. But we're kind of glad that we did because the weather was beautiful, perfect, because I think it's really going to start to heat up now.
Right.
But I was excited because I knew I was going to be able to walk and kind of hike. Nothing too aggressive like being on the Psycho. But yeah, so that's really all since we last talked, that's been the biggest thing.
That's pretty cool.
That's up with me.
That's pretty extreme though. Did you go with a group of friends or did you go alone or?
No, I went with a friend. So it was nice. I don't like to go. One of the things Like, I love my friends, I really do. But I'd rather it be like a group where it's just one or two, because I feel like you do more touristy stuff that way, or exploring,
Right.
versus if you have a group of friends, you know, not everyone's going to be on the same page. Not everyone's going to want to do the shit or hike as many miles as you will. You know what I mean?
Right.
Like, I think on Saturday we did like 15 miles or something. Like, you know, like that might be too much for people. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
So yeah. But when I have gone with groups to, like, I went to Lake Tahoe last year, right? People were wasted most of the time, and I was just like, well, so I do want to go back.
Yeah.
So, but I love my friends. This is by no means, if you're listening, a negative, bad thing. I just like to do stupid shit like that, like hike and climb shit.
No, it's, you know what's cool is you went at the perfect time for Death Valley, because
Yeah, it gets really hot.
I went in the middle of summer, okay, which is something I do not recommend, okay, but I did it on purpose. There's a reason for that. Two things.
Were you suicidal or?
Oh yeah. I'm gonna tell you how crazy it got.
Lord.
Let's just say that we had to bring extra water just for the hike into Death Valley, okay? Because with the extreme heat there, in that time, they're talking about what do you call that when you overheat? What's that word?
Heat exhaustion.
Heat exhaustion within 30 minutes. Like, they were saying that if you start to sweat if you're drinking enough water, or you think you are, and you start to sweat, like, you're already in bad shape. Like, time to leave. You know, it's that's how extreme it is there. And it's also one of the lowest points in the U.S. It's at minus 279 feet below sea level.
Yeah.
So it's very unique.
And I went to that spot. So.
And you know the cool thing is, I wish I would have known you were going, because I would have said you have to go to the playa. Have you been to the playa or heard of the playa?
You know, I'd have to look at the map, because we hit like a bunch of spots. Like a lot, so I might have, yes.
So the playa has these gigantic rocks that have a trail behind them for thousands of feet or yards, or maybe even a quarter mile or a mile even, and it looks like these rocks are racing each other.
I think we might have hit it, because we literally did a lot. We hit. I think most people spend several days there. We hit like everything, but I just don't remember all the names. Do you know what I mean? Yeah. Yeah,
it's something very unique, because you know, you see these rocks, they look like they're racing each other, and the mystery is who's pushing the rocks, because you cannot push those rocks. They weigh as much as 2 or 3 cars, you know. So it turns out that Death Valley freezes in the wintertime, and there's a thin layer of ice, and the wind blows those rocks.
Yeah.
So it's something.
I believe it.
It's like one of those mysteries that were solved like 10 years ago or something like that. But crazy thing is, on that same day, we went from minus 279 feet, and I went to 14,200 feet up at White Mountain, California, and camped up there for 5 days.
Nice.
So lowest point in the U.S., third highest peak in the U.S. Camped up for 5 days. Ended up with altitude sickness. I do not recommend it.
Yeah. Yeah, altitude sickness sucks.
Yeah.
Well, I guess don't go to Death Valley in the summer, guys.
No.
That's why they call it Death Valley. It's funny, because I'm reading one of my friend's books, who I'm going to have on the podcast later. It's about death and dying and hospice care and grief.
Right.
And she had texted me and was like, so how's the book? And I was like, well, I'm supposed to start reading it once I get back tomorrow. But I'm currently in Death Valley. And she thought it was interesting that we're talking about a book about death, and I'm like out there in Death Valley. So
that's funny.
It was fitting. So, but yes. So you ready for this week's subject?
What do you got for me?
So have you heard of Armie Hammer?
Yeah, it's like the stuff you put in your refrigerator, right? Like, it keeps your refrigerator fresh.
Yeah. I mean,
the white powder.
It sounds like it, but it's not.
Don't you just wonder if he was named after that?
Yeah, there's an interview of him on one of the late night shows, where they kind of talk about that as well. I think he said that his grandfather tried to buy it,
Oh wow,
at one point. But yeah, or he just bought it. I'm not sure what the issue is,
that's
but yes.
interesting.
Have you heard of the actor?
Yeah, you know what? And the first time, honestly, the first time I seen him or heard of him was him playing Cameron and Tyler Winklevoss in the movie The Social Network, the movie about Mark Zuckerberg and Facebook.
I have not seen that movie.
Oh, you really? That's
Yeah.
you got to watch that one.
Yeah, so I didn't realize I had never heard of him before. I did not realize who he was until obviously this bombshell of scandal came to light earlier this year. When I realized that I had seen him in certain movies, but he just never really plays a main character.
Right.
So I think that's why for me it was just like I didn't know who he was. He has like a pretty boy face, but like he could also, to me, now this is just my opinion, he could also be like those guys that come out on those Hallmark movies. Like he just looked like a pretty face that was just random to me. Not random. Like, what do you know, like he could be in a Hallmark movie. Like nothing about him stood out. So when this actually came to light, that's when I kind of was like, oh, I did see that movie. And I, again, just didn't realize who he was. But the reason this story kind of, and why I wanted to do kind of like a quick little episode on this is because there have been some theories that have come out based on the scandal. And basically the scandal, which, what came to light is basically he has a kinky side to him. I guess he was cheating on his wife, and his wife filed for divorce. And when it was made public, the ex-girlfriend started to come out publicly to talk about essentially what he was into, which is just like, sadistic type of stuff, which there are couples that are into that and it's consensual, right?
Right.
There are people that are into physical, sexual fantasies, and again, it's consensual. But as more of these stories started to come out, it was more of, yes, they had consensual relationships with him, but there was a point where he took it too far and it was no longer consensual, right?
Right.
Because a woman or a man, because some men have been raped by women. There have been women who have been charged with rape.
Right.
In the past, basically you can be consensual, but if you say no at some point, you should be stopping, right?
Right.
Now the reason I wanted to bring this up is because, you know how the youngsters are on the internet, they're on TikTok, Twitter, right? There started to have some theories after this kind of blew up, right? He started losing jobs. He resigned from certain jobs. Then people started looking into him. And when I say young, it's, I'm 37, you're in your 40s, right?
Yes.
These are people that are in their 20s. And what I've learned from these people is they are fucking detectives, like FBI fucking detectives.
Oh, yeah.
They're finding out shit, helping the police find out shit, like they're doing police work that the police officers, or detectives they're not getting shit done, but somehow social media is with these youngings, right?
Right.
So I wanted to kind of mention two things, just to kind of give you guys somewhat of a background as to what I'm referring to. So the interest on these theories that we're going to talk about, well, it's not so much theories, but I guess my thing for this episode is, could it be possible? Is it possible for someone like him,
right,
who is into cannibalism, eating, saying these things, and then, we'll get into that. And again, when I say, we're not going to get into the details of the accusations, but we're going to look into, could it be possible what people are linking him to, these young kids who have also, done their work or they start researching, right?
Right.
So I wanted to talk about, I don't know if you heard of Kristen Smart, who was murdered and went missing 25 years ago.
Yeah, that case is back in the news this past week because they arrested this guy and his dad, right? There's
Yeah,
some
so
connection.
this guy and the father were always persons of interest, but somehow the police never had information enough to fucking arrest or look into. So
Right.
this guy started a podcast and a TikTok, and guess what? All the information's there. He found out shit. And this is just someone with a fucking podcast. Do you get what I'm saying?
Yeah.
And using TikTok. So this gets back to the police. They start searching all the stuff that happened. They arrest them is what I'm getting at, right?
Right.
This guy was doing God's work on his own, doing the research,
Yeah.
using TikTok, using the podcast, right?
Right.
So that was all over the news, right? Then the other one that I wanted to talk to is we had also, disappearance in 2001 of a 17-year-old Alyssa Turney, who had been basically the sister. The father had been accused, or the person of suspect, and the same thing. The Arizona police never followed up, couldn't find shit. They kept telling the sister, we don't have enough. So what did she do? She went to TikTok. She started a podcast
Right.
with all this information. And guess what? He's in jail now. 2001 was when
Right.
she disappeared. But what I'm getting at is that the stuff that's coming out right now, all these things from the Kristen Smart disappearance to them arresting the suspects here in San Pedro, right?
Right.
That took, it wasn't like overnight. It wasn't like the TikToks and the podcast went public and viral overnight. No, this is shit that happened over a long period of time, but social media got these arrests made, right?
Right.
Same with this case of Alyssa Turney, who went missing. The sister who felt that it was the father, even though they had no concrete evidence. She had all this like videos. She was putting things together, was getting the runaround, decades later. So she decided she was going to use TikTok and the podcast to put the information out there. And then guess what? Youngsters started helping. Next thing you know, he's arrested for her disappearance. So what I'm getting at is that we're going to talk about Armie Hammer, who no one's really kind of talking about. It's almost like it was talked about publicly, right? When it first came out, but it was more that he was into rough sex, this and this and that. Next thing you know, you got youngsters looking up stuff, trying to put him together with certain things, right?
Right.
So everything we're going to talk about is circumstantial. Everything we're going to talk about is stuff that I gathered from the internet. So it's out there from multiple sources, right?
Right.
But we're also going to look into because they started looking into, well, who is Armie Hammers? You know what I mean?
Right.
He has also a shady ass family history. Who seems to have gotten away with stuff, maybe. But I don't know. I'm blabbing, but did you see where I'm going with this?
Yes. I mean, I don't know much or anything about him, but it sounds like he came from a privileged family, wealthy.
Very privileged, privileged. Yeah. So he obviously was born to Michael Armand Hammer, who is the grandson of an oil tycoon called Armand Hammer. And so he's just an actor, but they come from, money or whatever. But basically, we talked about where all these cases are coming, where ex-women who were in consensual relationships with him started to say that he was into cannibalism, talking about killing, eating them. So when these accusations came, some people were like, well, some people are into that, but then it came into the question of, is it consensual? Or when they said, okay, no more, I'm not comfortable, he continued. And so he is currently being investigated by LAPD, but again, the media doesn't really talk about it again, these are alleged rapes, right? But they are investigating him. So what does the youth on TikTok and Twitter do? They start looking at old interviews that he's made, promoting his movies. And he always says bizarre things that when you look at, he's into cannibalism. People are like, oh, now it all makes sense. Like he said this, you know what I mean? Like in one of the interviews, he said that he was given raw meat at a restaurant and he didn't want to be like a complainer. So he just ate it and he thought it was pretty good. And so now people are like, oh, well, he liked the raw meat that they gave him and didn't complain. Like it's just, and he was making it as a fun story at late night, right?
Right.
And then there was an interview, you know, you and I have had very successful episodes about Johnny Depp and Amber Heard.
Right.
Where they were both together and they were both talking and it just, people were commenting like, you know, like, wow, two psychopaths, like in an interview. It was pretty funny. But the biggest thing was that, again, there was this whole thing about violence, right? So we've all talked about few murders on this show. The Night Stalker.
Right.
You know, and I'm sure you know, there's serial killers. It's about power. You know, what I guess what some people are saying is that we're trying to kind of like not make a big deal of the potential that he could be crazier than he's coming off. Because all these women that are coming out, all his ex-girlfriends are literally women he was doing this to. And it's more than one. It's several now. With similar stories. Like one was saying she was branded with his initial. Again, some people are into that, you know, but it comes down to the whole consensual thing. But the other thing too is that people started to somehow, I'm not really sure how they got it, but someone found out that there was a woman who went missing. I don't know if you heard about this. Did you?
No.
Okay. So in February, they had noted that he was filming and working on a project that was kind of like in the Palm Springs area, just on the outskirts of it.
Okay.
Around, I don't know if it was June or August of last year. Excuse me for not having the appropriate date. But this woman had gone missing. And people were like, again, doing their detective work like they've done with other stuff, right?
Right.
We're like, well, how funny, just down the street, this girl went missing where he was working. Like and then in January, they found a body and they've then ID'd it as the woman who went missing in the time that he was there, if that makes sense.
Right.
So then people were like, could it be that there's a link, right? Because again, I don't know if you've ever seen there's a documentary like Don't Fuck with Cats on Netflix.
Yes,
where these people did it all online. So essentially this is what these communities are doing. So these communities are like, could he be linked, right? So when they were going to release that this person was going to release that information, they were like, this is really big, this is huge. Or not, we don't know if they were going to release this story. But in February, when they ID'd the girl, this person was saying, oh my God, I have like a big deal. Like this is going to be huge. And around that time, his publicist and like one of his lawyers quit abruptly. They didn't quit when the allegations of cannibalism came out. It just literally when this story was about to break. Then the person said they were dropped by their PR company, the one who was about to release this information. And then they never released any information, but people kind of caught on and were basically linking him to that disappearance of that girl. The police said that they were not investigating him, but it's just been crazy. But a lot of people believe, and they're putting everything together, that he's linked to that. But then the police said, we're not investigating him at this time. But a lot of people are still digging. So I've seen quite a few articles on that. But since then, guess what? These youngsters figured out that one of Armie Hammer's aunts wrote a book about the family. And she basically talks about how fucked up this family is. And this is like family from money. You know what I mean?
Right.
This is the book written by Casey Hammer. She's Armie's aunt. And it only resurfaced because of all of these disturbing cannibalism. You know, I want to like fucking do this to your ribs and, you know, like crazy shit. Like I
Yeah.
said, some people are into that kind of talk, you know, but I think maybe what people are trying to say, it sounds like there's a lot of violence tied to the family that maybe they wouldn't put it past him. And a lot of people believe that maybe right now it's all conspiracy, but they believe that it's probably we're going to find crazy shit. Like some people are joking like, oh, I can't wait. I'm running out of like crime, murder documentaries. I can't wait for the Armie Hammer one to come out.
Oh no.
But yes, so because of this story and people, the youth, right, looking into it, they noticed that his aunt had written a memoir of her life growing up in the oil tycoon family of this this lovely man here that we're talking about. So a lot of people feel that this book kind of puts his behaviors in perspective. As far as, you know, maybe this is normal for him because he grew up with men who are fucking crazy and violent, right? So we talked about that his great grandfather was the oil tycoon, Armie Hammer, just like the baking soda.
Oh wow. That was a joke.
And it was, yeah. But I think it says here that they moved to the United States from Russia. Again, this is I'm reading from Distractify, an article online. And so going back, it says, while many rumors imply that Armie was named after Arm and Hammer, the brand of baking soda, right?
Okay.
A company that he happened to become a majority shareholder in his later years. This is his great grandfather. Armie was actually named after Arm and Hammer symbol of the Socialist Party, Labor Party of America. So that was interesting. But in, I guess, based on this article, like, you know, like the family was shady. What do you expect from oil tycoons and lots of money, right?
Right.
But there was, you know, like drug fueled parties. Apparently there was child abuse or, you know, abuse, like the dad abused of the aunt Casey. She claims also, in the book that I think, let's see, where she says enjoyed being around, could never trust. I thought I had it here, but I did not. Okay, sorry. I'm not prepared for that. She was molested, essentially.
Oh, wow.
So there was a lot of sexual illegal shit going on in that family, and the men all, like, some of them were arrested, and there's public records of everything. So what people were saying is he grew up in kind of like a dysfunctional, fucked up family. So they're not maybe surprised that this happened. He was arrested in 2010 for drug possession. Wasn't a lot, but the charges were dropped, obviously. And basically he claimed that he didn't know what the possession laws were between state and federal. He was playing the victim. But somehow got away with it, and the charges were dropped. So what do you think? Do you think he could be, like, is this hearsay, like, as far as, like, could he be a murderer if these kids are right? And when I say kids, these are adults, but they're just, I call them kids because they're younger than me. Right. But they're out there doing homework and researching, reading the aunt's book, you know, like they're putting shit together like they have with a bunch of other stuff. You and I talked about the Free Britney movement. Yes. A lot of times people, you know, are like, oh, well, Britney this, Britney that. It's not, it's bigger than that. You know, you have Britney fans who are essentially now lawyers looking at public records and realizing that there's financial abuse by her estate and her parents. So that's where the Free Britney movement is. So what I'm getting at is that the internet is amazing for these type of cases. Now, I am not a fan of cancel culture. But if there are crimes involved, let's fucking find that shit. You know what I mean? Let's
Right.
find it. Let's get it done. But do you think I'm being crazy to think that they could be onto something?
Yes, you are crazy. No.
No, be honest with me, because
No. I'm just kidding. I was joking there.
I've seen the power of the youngsters. Oh my god, I feel like such an old lady with I should have. I'm seeing how they're turning these two cold cases, decades old, fucking getting people arrested. You know what I mean? Using social media.
Yeah, because look, police detectives can only go so far because they have stacks and stacks of files to work on. You know, they can only follow so many leads. So we live in the digital age, and this is interesting, okay, because this quote comes from the movie The Social Network, which he is in. And there's a quote that says, "The internet is written in ink." Okay, that comes from that movie, and that's crazy because I always, every time somebody puts some shit up and they get busted or something, I'm like, look, it's written in ink, you know. You know, we have the TikTokers, right? We have, you know, Twitter people on there, you know, and people, and I like to call them the armchair detectives, you know. So the people at home that look into interviews on YouTube or their exes or social media posts, and they try to piece together who said what and this. Now, is it possible? Sure, it's possible. And, you know, the interesting thing is this. When, I mean, sure, he was arrested for drugs and all that, you know, whatever, right? Like, who hasn't been, right? You know, and all of a sudden, it's like the stories start to come out about the exes, right? And just alleged, you know, cannibalism, and he's into that kind of stuff, whatever. And I'm like, well, that's kind of weird. Like, I wonder if this girl just hates him and it's something she just made up and tried to make him look bad or whatever, right? Because if you do that strategically, that's how these actors can get canceled from movies, right? And I was thinking, you know, and then, but here's the thing, then you have another one come forward, right? They have another one come, and I'm like, wait a minute. One, you know, whatever, whether it's true or not, right? But then you have two, and you have 3 and 4 people coming out, you know, women coming out as exes, telling us similar stories. Then you're like, well, now there's a pattern, okay? And then here's my question. I can play devil's advocate for 1 second, not to take his side, but just to put it aside and be like, I'm guessing he's pretty wealthy, right? And I always wonder who's going after him for some kind of financial compensation, you know? Because in the end, you know, you can take somebody to court, civil court, and you can make this all go away. Somebody gets paid, right? And then the disclosure is sealed. Like, we'll never find out what this girl was paid. Maybe she was paid $50 million. We'll never find that out. But I always wonder if this could be like one of those cases. Mind you, devil's advocate, okay? Like, I'm not taking a side because I don't know anything about him. But it is interesting, though, that there's a bunch of people coming forward now. Well, his exes, you know, these women. So, I don't know. One person's one thing, you know, if you don't have evidence and stuff. But now if you have a bunch of women and there's possibilities that they have evidence, possibly photos. Remember, we're in the digital age. So people, you know, they put their hands around the girl's neck during sex and, you know, leave marks and stroke, you know, choke them till they pass out. And they take photos of that, right? Somewhere those photos are buried somewhere. It's evidence, you know. So maybe, you know, maybe he went too far with some of these exes. I don't know. But the time to that murder, I mean, that would be interesting. That would be like I wonder what the connections are. Like, you know, so somebody has had to have seen that woman before she disappeared. Like, was she close to the set? Was she partying with the crew? Like, somebody saw her, you know?
Well, apparently there was parties after, but I think that's where they're in the process of, I guess they've gotten to that much information. Do you know what I mean?
Right.
Obviously he since these allegations, he does says that he's into kinky stuff. He hasn't denied necessarily some of the shit that he said, as far as in hinting towards cannibalism, but he also did say that a lot of it was consensual.
Right.
I actually just found the reason why they were saying that maybe he grew up with this flawed daddy issues. There's an article in Vanity Fair that kind of goes into detail of all the men in his lineage, and like his grandfather like gave his wife an abortion like then and there, you know? So who knows if in that family, the men talked about it like that was powerful, you know, like
Right.
your great grandfather did this and he was prosecuted for that. You know what I mean? So
Right.
maybe because I don't think they have as much money as they had before, because I think Armie's father was only given like $250,000. So there is wealth, obviously, but I don't think it's as much as the oil tycoon days.
Right.
So I don't know if this was maybe Armie Hammer's trying to be the strong man, right? Who comes from a lineage of fucking criminals.
Right.
Who apparently has a link to Epstein, the family, with laundering money.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, so it's a big rabbit hole. Like,
Damn. Yeah.
but what I'm getting at is that, so here he is, a pretty boy, pretty face, you know, obviously doesn't have maybe like the business end of it. So how does he instill power of feeling strong? And, you know, like I said, like you said, devil's advocate, some people are into being the dominant one, doing sexual stuff, right?
Yeah.
Some women are into that. But with the fact that more women are saying, yeah, I dated him, and they're showing pictures of them dating in several places, right? Wow, he's married.
Right.
The issue then comes that at one point they said, no, you've taken it too far. I'm not comfortable. Stop. And he wouldn't. And it seems like what they're saying is that he could have progressed, right? And that's something we've seen with serial killers, right?
Right.
They have that fix, and then they get worse and worse and worse. And so some people started to think, well, he might be doing stuff, you know, that's harder, like murder. So some
Right.
people believe that that's something that we're going to find out in the next few years if the young kids continue to do their research. But it could be a total fucking coincidence
Yeah.
that this girl who went missing around that time, and apparently there's another one that he was being investigated for as well. Not investigated, that he was being linked, but then the police quickly said, we don't think he has anything to do with that. So it could be nothing, you know, but definitely I think they're looking at him and he's laying low. But the other thing is, will people forget all this and then he's going to be okay? Because it sounds like he was getting away with a lot prior to it. I don't know. But
I am curious about that, since you mentioned that. And that's really interesting because I remember, like I said, I remember him from The Social Network, right? Because he plays the two twin brothers together in the same scene, side by side, which I thought was really interesting how they pull that off. When I saw that movie, I kept thinking, who's this guy? Because he's a beautiful man, right? He could be a leading actor, right? And yet he never is. Like, he's just never the lead, you know, until that Johnny Depp movie, The Lone Ranger. And even that was just not even a good movie, you know? I mean, so I kept thinking, well, where is his film career? So I keep thinking to what you just said, and his career, I don't think it's big enough, because even he is on record, even on that Vanity Fair article, saying how he tends to kill. He like whoever he makes a movie with, like the movie bombs, you know, which is pretty funny. But he makes fun of that. He makes fun of himself in all these interviews, and I'm thinking, he is no big name. That he's no leading man name. He's no DiCaprio. He's no Johnny Depp. You know what I'm saying? So when you have that kind of name, you can almost bury any story if you just go on with your life and keep working, right? The story eventually just fizzles out. For whatever reason, Hollywood tends to forgive and forget. I mean, and I'll never understand that, but that's just the way it is. But he doesn't have that career. So will the story ever go away? I guess that's my question. You know?
yeah, so I think that as far as the media is concerned, the story goes away. It's not going away on YouTube, podcast, Twitter, and TikTok. And that's where I think he needs to be careful. If it's just this, you know, like the media, when, you know, I'm not a Trump supporter or anything, but the mainstream media will just throw you what they want to throw you. There are certain things, we've talked about mass shootings, right?
Right.
I go to Twitter because I know I'm getting up-to-date information there, you know, and the news might not cover it until hours later. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So, yes, the media under the table. It's no big deal. You know, celebrity talk shows on E, you know, Access Hollywood talked about it, but they haven't gone into this end of it. This is where he needs to be careful. If there's really nothing to do with this, the only reason Vanity Fair covered all this, and, you know, if you guys look up the Vanity Fair article, it goes into how criminal all the men before him are. Like,
Right.
family just has a criminal record. Every single person above him, you know,
Right.
whether it's giving his wife a forced abortion, right?
Yeah.
Laundering money, dealing with Epstein, or, you know, they're fucking criminals, right? So the reason this was done is essentially because of TikTok, Twitter, and YouTube, because the podcasters, the TikTokers, they're all interlinked and they're just sharing information, and people are looking and searching. And so now Vanity Fair is like, oh, let's do a fucking article on the entire timeline of the family. And, you know, they wouldn't do it if they knew there wasn't. Even Vanity Fair is part of that media thing that usually doesn't cover certain things. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So I don't know. I wanted to talk about this because I need to give credit to all the people who have who with the two stories that I talked about earlier, those were cold cases, and it took social media, something people hate, right? And they love to talk shit about.
Yeah, exactly.
There are fucking criminal, investigative, non-educated people out there doing better jobs than the fucking detectives, all on social media. And it's communities. If you guys have not seen that show on Netflix, let me look it up. Is it Don't Fuck with Cats?
Yeah, something like that.
Oh my God. Don't Fuck with Cats. Okay, Hunting an Internet Killer. So if you guys want to watch, this is a really good documentary. And the reason I bring it up, it's because these people who are sitting doing Facebook groups, this is before TikTok, this is before, you know, podcasts really took off. They were on Facebook groups and they were doing shit, handling shit. Like, these are smart motherfuckers, but yet, you know, they're not detectives that are on payroll, but they fucking cracked this. Like, and there's a documentary on Netflix, and that's essentially what social media is doing right now. In the sense with those cases that I talked about in the beginning, that these were cold cases, now they have arrests, right? Or the Britney Spears thing, you know, when people seem confused as to what's happening. It's not just about, you know, what her mental health issues may or may not be. It's about the fraud and the financial abuse that is happening. So now that you have these kids following each other, feeding off of each other, asking for these documents, there's so much shit that's being found out. I all I'm saying is the power of social media. Yeah, you can talk shit about it, but it's doing great shit when it comes to these true crime, you know, type of stuff. So although everything I said for this Armie Hammer case is hearsay right now, right? Because I've seen the power of these young people and people who are committed, and this is millennials as well, right? I believe that I would not be at all surprised if a year from now there is some type of fucking link with some type of criminal act with Armie Hammer at this point. I could be wrong, but go watch Don't Fuck with Cats. It kind of tells you what it is that what I'm trying to get out there is that people are using the internet and social media to solve these cases. And so I would not be surprised.
Yeah.
And so, like I said, now people are reading this book about the Hammer family, and now Vanity Fair is like, let's talk about the men of this troubled, you know, the men that came before this troubled actor who likes kinky sex. You know, they won't touch who's being potentially looked at for murder.
Right.
They just say that he likes kinky sex, you know, and I didn't know any of that.
I'm surprised about, okay, here's the thing. In the days where all the details come out, you know, in these present days, like, there's a lot of talk of the kinky sex and abuse, but there's no details. Like, there's like, oh, he tied me up and all that. But I'm like, okay, that seemed like it started out consensual, but where did it go wrong, you know? Like,
yeah.
Like, something obviously he did something weird, wrong, and it went too far. Not just with one person, but apparently multiple. And surprisingly, those details are not out there. So I wonder why.
Well, they're right not to put it out there. What these women are saying, and well, there are some women, like one gave a press conference recently, which I was kind of annoyed because I don't like this lawyer. If you guys haven't seen her, she's a lawyer for every person. She's just trying to get money out of these poor souls.
It's not Gloria
You know who I'm
Allred,
talking about? Yes, is it her? Oh my God. So I am so over that lady, but don't come after me.
Right.
Because she might come after me.
Yeah, she totally will.
But I feel like she always inserts herself, and the women sometimes lose credibility in the public eye. So
Right.
he has multiple accusers. There's only one woman who has hired her. So what I think is that she reaches out to these women in all these cases, right? Because it's usually women she's what do you call it? Representing, right?
Right.
But again, don't come after me. But yes,
I'll
so
bail you out, no worries.
yeah, so I feel like she's taken some credibility off of that accusation, but there are other women who have similar accusations.
Right.
The thing is that when they said no, he continued. And no means no.
That's true.
Now, this goes for women too, right? If a man doesn't want it, ladies, no means no.
Yeah.
So I'm trying to do it from both sides,
No,
right? So I think
it's true. And what's fascinating about that is, do you ever see a movie with Demi Moore called Disclosure?
no, I haven't.
You have
The
to see
beautiful
it.
Demi Moore.
Yeah, I
Tell
love
me
her.
about it.
You have to see it. I saw this movie. It came out in the 90s, okay? And a friend of mine told me, you have to watch this, right? So I actually went to the theaters and I went to go watch it because it's a true story that happened at IBM. I believe when IBM used to be in Santa Monica, they had a headquarters there for a while. It's a true story of a man that was sexually harassed by his boss, a female boss. So the movie is Demi Moore, who's the boss, and Michael Douglas, who's the employee. And she kind of forces, they're exes, okay? They were exes 20 years ago, and he's now married with kids and all that, new wife and all that, new career. But she somehow used her power to, get him to, have sex with her, which, I'm not going to spoil the movie, but it's really fascinating because, like you said, it goes both ways. And that was one of the movies, and one of the few movies, because you don't really see that in movies anymore. That was just like one time, sadly you do see, rape over and over again, and it's always female victims in the movies. But in this
Correct.
case, the plot,
And in real life. Sorry.
but in this case, the plot was the male, and he was innocent.
Mm-hmm.
Yet, there were lies being told, and they were trying to spin the story. So, but yeah, check it out. It's called Disclosure. Check it out. It's a good movie.
Yeah, so everyone, Disclosure, and what was the movie I just said? Oh my God. It's on Netflix.
Cats.
It's a docuseries. Don't Fuck with Cats.
Yes.
It's a docuseries, but it's, I believe, 3 or 4 episodes. So we're going to watch Disclosure. One, I do remember the movie vaguely when you said the actors. I just didn't realize that was the movie in my head, in my childhood memory. So I don't know why I was watching that, but I'm going to watch it as an adult now. And then Don't Fuck with Cats. Watch that. It's a disturbing true crime. Of course, the whole reason I want you guys to watch it is because a lot of what's happening right now in true crime is exactly what you're going to see there. Not so much the crime, but the behind the scenes of how these everyday people who have full-time jobs are fucking getting shit done and help doing the work for the police on their free time using, social media.
Yeah.
And so that was kind of like what I wanted to talk about. Yes, it's about Armie Hammer, and these allegations. Again, this is very recent. But again, people started going through his Twitter feed, and he would put bizarre things. And now when you hear cannibalism, you're like, oh, okay, well, yeah, I should have known then that he was a cannibal. Like
Yeah. It's interesting about the whole cannibalism thing, because cannibalism is typically like when you actually do it, right? If you say something, which like he's quoted saying, I want to eat your ribs, that's more of a fantasy, right? You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Like it's a weird fucking fantasy, but you're not
But
accountable
that's
till you
what
actually do it.
sometimes, and that's what people are saying is, could he have done it? Like,
Right.
could he, they're looking at the psychology of everything now. They're like, okay, we're going back. He grew up with fucked up fucking his dad, grandpa, great grandfather, fucked up motherfuckers, like,
Right. Right.
so does he have that narcissistic type, I'm gonna get away with everything because my relatives got away with everything, you know what I mean, type of
Right.
mentality.
Right.
And yes, it could be nothing. Maybe he's never done it. It's just been kinky fantasy. You know what I mean? But what if we find out later that he acted on certain things? I mean, he was obviously getting physical with women and they told him stop. You're getting out of hand, and he wouldn't. I think
Right.
those are the allegations right now. So people are, they could be just putting two things together, that have nothing to do with it. But because I've seen these two cold cases, which we talked about earlier, get fucking solved because of social media. And then, in the middle of this podcast recording, I remembered Don't Fuck with Cats docuseries on Netflix, where essentially social media and these people on their free time help solve this shit.
Right.
I'm a believer that it's possible. Now, it might be far-fetched, but we're 2020 is just, I would not be surprised if I heard something a year from now or 2 years from now. I would not be surprised whatsoever. So if you guys want to look into these articles, again, Vanity Fair took the time to kind of talk about his terrible family lineage. There's a book of his aunt who's shunned from the family, when she talked about the same kind of stuff, and also of, the terrible things that she writes about. So people are just looking into that right now, and who knows, maybe he's not linked to it, or maybe he is, and I don't know. I just thought it was very interesting that what if we're seeing them, because I've learned a lot about these cold cases towards the end. Do you know what I mean?
Right.
Where it's really started to grow like steam, and a lot of followers, and people are really looking into it. Right now this is like in the beginning stages. So I was just thinking of these cases, like the father and son who were arrested last week, right?
Yeah.
All because of a guy by himself on podcast, and then TikTok, spreading the word, and things getting, they were arrested, So I was just wondering what it could be. Could it be? I don't know. Maybe I'm being crazy, guys. You tell me. You write to me in Instagram and tell me, am I being fucking crazy? But watch Don't Fuck with Cats. And then message me if I'm crazy. So, anything you want to add?
No, just like you said, check out that Vanity Fair article. It's scheduled. It's released, but it's scheduled for the May 2021 issue. It's pretty lengthy, and it's got some interesting quotes too towards the end that really make you think, about what he said in those quotes, and whether or not they were taken out of context or how they were said. That's what I question. Like how are these? It's one thing if you have a recorded conversation, you can't mess with that. You know what I'm saying? But when you have a quote, is it just a fantasy quote? Is it taken out of context? Did he mean it? Is he really? It's like, it's weird. It's just weird. Some of this, I can chalk it up to, BDSM, weird sexual fantasies. But then there's the other side.
Some people are into it.
Yeah, and they're into it, and that's cool. But like, my biggest question is, did he ever act out on it? That's the thing. Like, is there a woman that has scars that said, hey, he cut me open here, or he tried, because then that's a game changer. That's next level. That's proof right there, and we haven't seen that yet. So that's why I'm kind of curious where this is going to go, who's going to come forward, what's going to surface in terms of evidence, or who's going to talk about it, or who's hiding or holding on to some crazy information. I guess only time will tell, like you said.
Only time will tell. And like I said, the only reason why I see it as a possibility, I'm not saying that I believe it, is because social media and people doing this on their time have closed cold cases recently. And you can look up those cases that I discussed earlier. You can get all the information, and it's out there. And newspapers now credit TikTok for these cold cases, getting them, and podcasts, getting them to where they are now. So watch Don't Fuck with Cats, Hunting an Internet Killer on Netflix. So, and again, this is on Facebook days. So it's on another level. It's like cracked out now. And these motherfuckers are straight up better than the FBI at this point. Because with what happened at Washington, D.C., the FBI literally went to social media and said, "Can you help us?"
Yeah.
And everybody was like, "Yeah."
Yeah.
And it's like free labor now. It's so sad. We should be getting paid for this. No, I'm just kidding.
Right.
Yeah, anyway, but okay, well, thank you for joining. We should do it again, like always. Leone. He's not
Absolutely.
listening, guys.
I fell asleep for a second.
He
Like, what?
checked out.
No, my answer to Mary is always absolutely.
Okay, so see you guys next time. Bye. That was episode 54 of the Purposely Curious podcast. Make sure to subscribe on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and on most podcast platforms. And follow us on social media at Purposely Curious on Instagram and at Purposely C Pod on Twitter. That's Purposely, the letter C, Pod. Until next time, you know what to do.